How do you feel about the difference between how women lead and how men lead?
I've seen that women lead with relationship building and common goals. We tend to want to build relationships with people, find common ground and common goals, and work towards that. I have found that there are certain people, and like what you said, some men who are very much more transactional type of relationships, and that's fine too. Because if that's their way of working with people, I can adapt myself to do that. And sometimes we kind of have to, because that's just how it is, especially in politics. But really making it known that it's for this common goal.
When women lead, it really is those relationships that I find myself trying to build and focus on. And of course, the transactional pieces are they're going to be a part of it, but we can still make those relationships strong while we're, doing those transactional processes and talking face to face with people, especially within the district, and just, sharing perspectives and really listening to understand. I think is a key in that that women typically bring in leadership.
Experience, like particularly in the military, where it is like, let's be real and upfront, like male dominated. It's a struggle to balance like your personal like leadership values with, sort of the push to be a certain way as a leader. So just starting a movement of like women, like more women leadership, it's important to start small and like in your small groups, your squad, your small office, and then building it out and supporting like other women leaders in the endeavor.
Of course, I am by nature a collaborator. I work in collaboration. I start with collaboration where you have to have consensus and you have to have collaboratives. Understanding of your shared goals, it makes it really important to know what your values are, leading with your values and making sure that you know what is not on the trading block. Okay, well, if we have to play this kind of like political gamesmanship here, what are those things that matter to me and what are my values that are not going to be open to trade? And I do strongly believe that, women and queer people probably have a stronger sense of what that looks like.
Right. And a lot of these networking, discussions we were having, or the events, I should say, that we would go to, which was predominantly men, it would be, oh, what do you do? Okay, well, this is coming up for our project. And so it would be like a quick pro quo, like you scratch my back and I scratch her. And it didn't feel very authentic to me. And it felt like ingenuine. And so and it felt like you are as useful as the things that you could provide, whereas when I'm in the company of women, it's like, we build each other up, right? I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by women in politics whose main priority is building each other up, right? It's not to get reelected. It's like we are empathetic towards each other, right? And then we are trying to lift each other up. And so if my BIPOC women of color over in Hopkins need some support and they just need me to show up at a council meeting, you show up, right? Minnetonka, the same thing. I know that both Minnetonka and Hopkins, women of color who've been elected in those positions have showed up to a city council meeting at St. Louis Park, right? And so that to me is power. That's how you build coalitions. That's what it is. And women focus more on building coalitions and long-lasting, genuine relationships that help each other, that uplift each other, that continuously open doors for each other. And so when I heard Senator Torres Reyes saying that women are transformational, absolutely. I 101% stand behind her on that one.
I do think that women naturally function more as a collective, and there's power in numbers, right? And I think that when it's transactional, or often men or people who want to succeed, they think that dividing and conquering is how you do it, but it's actually that's an actual colonized way of leading. And for women, we decolonize that naturally, because we know that when more of us are working on the same issue together, we all look at it from all different angles, and that we look at it in a more wholesome way. And I think that that's a power that women really do have. And not saying that like men don't have that, but I think as women who care about similar issues, we do tend to put our differences aside and are less in, like, I would say, less personal about things, right? When things impact us personally, to really work towards a common goal.
Folks, because I see this when I do testimony in the legislature, there are plenty of women that I don't necessarily support. They've come in on the same platform as men, and they are transactional, and they want to shut the door too. They've come in and they want to shut the door. And so I do think that women that I want to support and promote are more of what we're talking about here, but you can't assume it, because inevitably we'll be in a hearing and the women that support the issue that may be in opposition to me are brought forward as a women's issue, who are women against women. Well, I'm surprised, but then of course you learn that some of the women who've gotten ahead have played by the same rules. And so it's very nice to see that some women are much more open. We work with some great women legislators and at all levels, and there you can see the difference of more of collaborative sharing, being willing to engage and work on issues. And then you see the ones who are not supportive and shut the door and are transactional, or say, no, we really don't need that. We're just fine. And maybe they are fine. But I think one of the things I want to see is people who are supporting others in a responsible way.
I'll say that as somebody who doesn't identify as a woman, but as a gender nonconforming two-spirit person, I jump anytime I get a chance to work within circles where there's women and other gender expansive folks, but also men identified people who also embody some of those same communication and leadership styles. And I'm lucky to in my life have many folks who do lead in a very collaborative way, something that as two-spirit people, I think one of the big gifts that we have in my teachings that I've received is, really having that balance between male and female in that spectrum of being able to see multiple perspectives and multiple dimensions and the nuance and complexities. Something that I value so deeply is a yes and approach, is that it's not this sort of binary yes or no, black and white, one way answer, but we can hold multiple possibilities in one hand, right? And also the ability to own when you've done something that maybe is wrong, or maybe you made a mistake, or it didn't go as well. Just being able to say, through that learning curiosity mode of saying, I own this, and next time willing to fall, let's fall forward together, versus sort of this closed off, closed door, divisive way.
I feel like women really do have to transform institutions, right? In that way, because these institutions are not made for women to be in it. We view leadership as a panoramic view, and we look at it holistically. I think we play a big role in fighting for our community. I think we are very pro social engagement. I think we're willingness to share power. And I think another aspect too is that women wear so many hats during the day. We're not just one identity. I think we wear so many hats and we have so many responsibilities.
My trajectory here to womanhood is a little bit different, I think, than pretty much anybody else on the screen. And so, I didn't transition genders until I was 52. So I had 5 decades as presenting as male, living according to my, the gender assigned at birth. And that world was a world where there was no question about how men dominated. Having lived now 13 years, finally getting to be truly as who I am, and seeing the world through the eyes of a woman, and being marginalized in a variety of ways, not because I'm trans, but because I'm a woman. Although there's the transgender marginalization too. We talk about that, but you know, it's a different perspective for me, is that I'm a unifier, not a divider, and that I'm someone who will work to bridge differences, and someone who will try and talk about how humans are good, because the vast majority of people have good empathetic hearts, whether they're male, female, or however, or non-binary, however they identify, they do. It's just that many people are afraid, and that allows their hearts to be turned off, or they avoid using their hearts. So, and I think that it's much easier for me to talk about that as a woman than as a man. And I think that that's partly because of the way our society is structured and organized. On this side of the fence, I love it far better than I liked it on the other side.
Well, shout out to PTR, Senadora Patricia Torres Rey, who's been such a champion in that leadership role as a senator, and as the first Latina senator. We've, as women, always have to prove a point that's already been proven. We're working in a society that pushes us away. And I see the transformative work that we're especially within this election, with a sisterhood and a bond of women of color that are coming from communities. Some for the first, we've got, you know, the future senator of 63 after Patricia Torres Rey, and I speak it to an existence, you know, Nadia Mohamed, who's a young Black Somali 25-year-old. She's gonna be the first and the youngest Muslim woman and Black woman, alongside other Black women candidates like Claire Verbatim, running out of St. Paul and Roseville, and the Asian sisters that are running in the House. You know, shout out to Samantha and Liz Lee out the East Side. So there's these conversations that we're holding, and recognizing that we're carrying our ancestors still, but we carrying our daughters in our arms in these spaces. And we're talking about not starting a new platform. No, we're building our communities to recognize empowerment and policy towards recognizing who we are and where we've came from has been stripped away unless you have access to those elders, access to perceiving education to make sure that our oral traditions are documented. We're talking about tribes. So the work is on education and educating each other and breaking bread, and not just putting us in these boxes of a census, but gathering us in full circle of recognizing that things haven't changed much. I mean, we're getting things reversed with Roe versus Wade here. We're getting folks to literally tell us how we can be represented on or how we need to be represented without knowing where we come from or how our bodies feel. So we're the transformative work and the action that's taking place is that we're here having conversations daily outside of a Capitol, outside of even being elected, and getting women, young women engaged in this work, because those people are my homegirls. You know, they're trying to break the cycles, and they've had to go through a lot of work as being staff for Congresswomen in DC for 10 years and now running for their Asian community. These young sisters are young 25-year-olds that just got out of college, that are in the streets, you know, protesting in the uprising aftermath of George Floyd to make sure that these police are being held accountable. We've got so much circling right here that this is a momentum. So the work is being a momentum and having each other's backs through this election process, through this campaigning, and writing our goals together of how we gonna do things inside them tunnels. And how we gonna be protected under them tunnels? Because there's one job of running a campaign, then there's a whole nother set of a wave. We got to recognize that we're out here to fight for women in general, but also not deteriorate the history of BIPOC women. That's the transformative action. Those are what inspires me about Patricia Torres Rey, because she did it for so long and she was by herself. You know, she really was in challenging moments where she amplified this new step for us to go to the House and for us to go to the Senate.